Hello, welcome to Module 14 entitled Managing Activities. I'll be focusing on a few critical issues in this module. In particular, we'll be focusing on strategies a company can adopt to increase its value. That means stock price. What strategies can a company adopt to increase stock price? There are a lot of ways, but we're going to focus on 3 ways. Ways to increase market share, ways to reduce cost and eliminate inefficiency, and ways to increase profitability. So, what strategies can a company adopt to increase market share, reduce costs, increase profitability? Do you buy that any one or a combination of all these strategies will increase stock price and therefore increase the value of the company? Let's take the first one. To increase market share, we need to talk about different marketing strategies companies can use. There are a lot of strategies, but I'll be focusing on 3 broad types of strategies. Companies can compete on innovative product design. These companies are basically innovators who want to be first in the market in a particular idea. A good example is Amazon.com. Another strategy, provision of high quality products and services. These companies focus on obtaining a reputation for high quality products and for high quality service. So that's their strategy. Another strategy, low cost production. These companies focus on providing cheap goods and services to the customer. That is basically their niche. Example would be Walmart or Kmart. Now let's do an exercise. For each of the companies listed on the following slide, identify which competitive strategy they should use. Innovative product design, B, high quality products and services, or C, low cost production. Tell me what you think is the best strategy for each of the companies I'm going to show you. Before you start, remember there could be multiple answers for each company. Here it is. I want you to stop this recording for a minute and jot down what you think the answers are, and then we'll restart. Here we go. Apple Computers, what did you say? A and B. They want to be innovative and also have a reputation for high quality products and service. So I'd go with A and B. Walmart is definitely C. Dell Computer, you could make a case their best strategy is A and B. They're innovative and they want to produce high quality products and provide high quality service. Mobile oil service stations. B. Ritz-Carlton Hotel. Definitely B. They want to have a reputation for high quality service. Nokia cell phones. A. eBay.com. A. Southwest Airlines. If you ever traveled on Southwest, let me ask you a question. What type of service do you get? Do they feed you continuously? The chances are their strategy is not high quality service, but low cost. C. They want to provide low cost service and at the same time charge a lower price for tickets. That's their niche. Now, let's go on to the second section, namely strategies a company can use to reduce costs. With reference to reducing costs, we'll be focusing on the concept of the value chain. Have you heard it before? This concept is used by managers to identify areas for potential cost reduction. We'll also be focusing on concepts or techniques to find out the cost of servicing different suppliers so you can identify the least costly supplier who provides you with high quality service. With reference to improving profitability, we'll be focusing on different pricing techniques to maximize organizational value. What's the best pricing technique for your company to compete? Techniques to identify the optimum level of output that can help a company maximize profit. Does it ring a bell? It should. We discussed this earlier, about 2 modules ago. So that's pretty much where we're going to go with the rest of this module. Now, let's talk about strategies companies can use to reduce costs. As I said, one concept is the concept of the value chain. So let's talk about that. The value chain is defined as all activities that add value to the product. Basically, what a company would do is they draw a flow chart starting from the first activity, which, if it's a manufacturing company, is buying raw materials. And you do a flow chart, identify all the activities till you reach the final activity, which is where you end up with the finished product. So if we look at all the activities that go on from the point where raw materials are bought to the sale of the finished product, we look at the activities and then it's broken down into 2 categories. It's in front of you. They are value added and non-value added. Value added activities are those that add value to the product. Non-value added activities are those that don't add value to the product. Guess what? In a cost-cutting exercise, the activities that are given first priority for downsizing are those which are categorized as non-value added. This is important, so let me repeat one more time. In a cost-cutting exercise, the activities that are given priority for downsizing are those which are perceived as non-value added. Now, let's do an exercise. This relates to a company called Fast Bike Company. They manufacture bicycles, and they're trying to identify which overhead activities are value added and which overhead activities are non-value added. I'll give you a series of activities. I want you to think about it and tell me which you think are value added and which are non-value added. Here is a sequence of activities. Engineering and designing the bicycle, storing the finished bicycle, moving raw materials from the warehouse to the assembly area, assembling wheels to the frame, providing customer service. Stop this exercise and jot down your answers. Start when you're ready. Here are the answers. Engineering and designing the bicycle. Is it value added? Definitely yes. It increases the value of the product. Storing the finished bicycle. What did you say? It's not considered value added. Storing a bicycle, doesn't increase the value of the item. So in a cost-cutting exercise, storing would be considered non-value added, so they'll find out better ways to store, or they may think what's the best way to avoid storing. Moving raw materials from that warehouse to the assembly area, it's not considered a value-added activity because it doesn't increase the value of the product. You're just moving raw materials from one area to another area. Assembling wheels to the frame, yes, it does add value to the product. The last one is, I think it could be contentious. What answer did you give? Most companies see providing customer service as a definite value-added activity. Let me ask you a question. Doesn't good service increase your perception about the value of a product or service? So the answer is yes. So in a cost-cutting exercise, issues like activities like storing and moving raw materials from one place to another will be considered non-value added and therefore will be critically examined to find better and more efficient ways of doing those activities. The other activities won't be touched. Now here's another exercise. Tell me which you think are value added and which are not. Stop this recording, jot down your answers, and start when you're ready. Are you done? Okay, here are the answers. Purchasing raw materials for production, what did you say? It's value added. Inspecting incoming raw materials when received, this is contentious. If you said value added, the chances are a lot of companies won't agree with you. It's considered non-value added. As I said, most companies do not see inspection as a value added activity. An example is the airline industry. A lot of airlines, I won't mention any names, they cut back on inspection when they want to reduce costs simply because it's not considered value added. So what they would do is they'd reduce inspection from, for example, 10 times a month to 5 times a month. When you enter a plane, would you know that they're inspecting it less? You certainly won't. Another case is in the motor industry. Again, I'm not mentioning names, but this company is one of the most prominent manufacturers in the US and the world. I'll give you an example. One of their models had a defect which made it vulnerable to exploding on impact in the event of an accident. The company still preferred to cut back on inspection. They figured that the cost of lawsuits in the event of an accident was less costly than actually inspecting all the vehicles. So the point I'm making is that most companies do not consider inspection as a value-added activity. Shipping completed products to customers, a lot of companies treat it as value-added. Wouldn't it increase your perception of a company if you received items on time? So for them, shipping to customers is important. If you didn't receive an item on time, wouldn't in your mind the perception about the company, wouldn't it decline? So shipping completed products to customers is considered value added. Preparing the machines for production, non-value added. Again, you may disagree, and it's your right to do so, but a lot of companies don't see that as increasing the value of the product. Producing products on the machine, definitely value added. Cleaning out the machine after production, non-value added. Scrapping products during production, non-value added. Here are more. Think about this too before proceeding. Storing partially completed products in a warehouse until the next machining operation, and I, inspecting the quality of finished products. Stop this recording, jot the answer down, and restart when you're done. Here are the answers. H. It's not considered a value-added activity. Inspecting the quality of finished products, this is contentious. Maybe it should be considered as value-added, but a lot of companies just treat it as non-value-added, which means, guess what? In a cost-cutting exercise, they may reduce the frequency of inspection, because inspecting isn't considered value added. So to summarize, in this example, inspection is not considered a value-added activity because it does not add value to the product as perceived by management, nor does preparing the machine for production, cleaning out the machine, scrapping products, or even warehousing products or inspecting the quality of finished products. You might think they're value added, and perhaps they should be, but most companies don't consider it that way. So these activities are the first ones to be cut. Another way to reduce cost is to compare the costs of suppliers and find out the least costly supplier who can provide you with a high quality of service. How is this done? You have to use certain concepts that we haven't done before. So let's work an example. Here it comes. This relates to a company called FlowCare, and what I'd like you to do is to print the slide which you have in front of you. I'd like you to print it out. This gives you some details about a supplier. This is the current supplier of FlowCare. You'll have to print this out. Now, they have an option. A new supplier has made a different proposal. I'd like you to read it, then print it out. So here are the questions. Should FlowCare switch to the new supplier? B. What are the factors should FlowCare consider before switching to the new supplier? Let's work it together. Let's look at let's do it on an annual basis. Let's look at the annual cost of the first supplier. So, to repeat, to decide whether the company should switch to the new supplier, compare the total cost of the old supplier with the potential new supplier. So let's figure out the annual cost of the original supplier. So the cost is, you're buying the product, it's $1 million a month. So we're going to do it on an annual basis. So for 12 months, it's $12 million. You have to factor in freight costs. It's $2,300 a month, and we're talking on an annual basis for 12 months. There it is in front of you. Now, this may confuse you. It's called financing costs. Let me put it up first. Let me explain. Inventory represents money tied down. So, if you have 500,000 inventory every month, that's money tied down. So, when the company needs cash, what do? If money is tied down in inventory, to get money, they got to get a loan from a bank. In this case, assume it's 18% per year. So they pay interest. This is called financing cost. Financing cost is part of the cost of holding inventory, which is on average, it's $500,000 per month, and we're talking about the financing cost for 1 year. The interest rate is 18%, so the total cost of inventory is $90,000. If you add it up, the total comes to $12,117,600. Let's consider the annual cost of the new supplier. The cost is 200,000 liters per month, for which the company pays $5.03, and we're doing it for 12 months. So 12 times 200,000 liters per month, it costs you $5.03. That's the cost in front of you. Freight cost, 0, because I think they're doing a just-in-time, and it's also factored into the price, so it's 0. Now, you do have inventory, which is, you have 5,000 times, because you hold, I think under the new system, on average, every month you hold 5,000 liters. You have to times it by $5.03, and the interest rate is 18%. So if you add it up, you get 4,527. Total it, 12,076. So when you compare the annual savings of the new supplier is $41,073. So the cost of the new supplier is less costly. But that's just from the financial angle. You also have to consider other issues, such as the reliability of the new supplier. For example, if they don't deliver on time, it's definitely going to affect their production schedules. If the supplier doesn't deliver on time, it's going to affect Flowcare's production schedules. So even if it's costly, if they're not reliable, there's going to be problems. So the final answer is that these qualitative factors should be considered before making a final decision. Now, let's go on to strategies for improving profitability. The conventional wisdom is that the pricing techniques a company uses helps improve profitability. So we'll focus on pricing techniques. There are different methods of pricing. They are market-based pricing, cost-based pricing. There are other techniques, but I'm just going to focus on 2. Let's take the first one, market-based pricing. This is where you just go with the market price. So a company looks at its competitors. Whatever the market price is, whatever your competitors charge, that's what you go with, because you say, well, that's the market price. Let's take the second one, the cost-based pricing technique. In the cost-based method, there are 3 steps. First, you figure out budgeted costs. Then you figure out the desired profit margin. And then you arrive at a selling price. Thus, you're in effect working backwards. For what it's worth, most companies which deal with the US government use cost-based pricing. Cost-based pricing is also very popular in the oil and gas industry. suppliers of oil and gas use cost-based pricing. They figure out their costs, they add their profit margin, and they come up with a price. They don't care what the going market rate is. They just say, they add their profit margin to the cost and say, this is the price we're selling at. If you don't like it, too bad. Okay, let me give you an example. Look at the Benson Shoe Company, and I've given you some financial information. I've given you their profit margin of 20%. The question is, what price should the company charge? They're using cost-based pricing. Print this out or try this problem, stop the recording meanwhile, and then when you think you have an answer, start again. Let's go. Here's the solution. Step 1. Compute the total cost. Well, you got fixed cost and variable cost. The fixed cost is $200,000. The variable cost, it's 100,000 pairs at $10 per pair, which is $1 million. So you arrive at a total of $1,200,000. Step 2, compute the expected revenues. How do you do that? You just said you want a profit, or they decided they want a profit margin of 20%. So you times the cost by 1.2, which is 1,440,000. Or you add 20% of 1.2 million to $1,200,000. So your expected revenue is 1,440,000. Step 3, compute the selling price per unit. How do you do that? Your expected revenue is 1,440,000. Your expected sales are 100,000. So you sell each pair at $14.40. So that's cost-based pricing. The final issue is how to maximize profit. What's the best output to maximize company profit? If a company produces less, that's bad because you lose market share. If you produce more, that's bad because you got to stick it in a warehouse, and holding inventory costs money. The only way to explain this is to give you an exercise. So here's an exercise in front of you. The firm sells keypads which are sold for $4.50 each. The firm can in this example, produce between 10, they can produce 10,000, 11,000, 12,000, or 13,000 in increments of 1,000 units. I'm giving you the cost structure, which is coming on the next slide. The question is, at what output level should the firm operate? So here's the cost structure. At 10,000 units, the total cost is $58,000. So the average unit cost is $5.80. 11,000 units, the total cost is $62,400. So if you divide it, the average unit cost is $5.67. At 12,000 units, the total cost is $67,000. So the average unit cost is $5.58. And at 13,000 units, the total cost is $71,600. And the average unit cost is $5.51. You can only sell it at $4.50, so it's obvious to you that they're making losses. They could file bankruptcy, but in this case, assume that even though the company is making losses, they wish to continue in the hope that next year will be better. So, to minimize losses, at what output level should the firm operate? Is it 10,000, 11,000, 12,000, or 13,000? I'd like you to print this out, and then I want you to stop this recording and try this problem, and then we'll restart. The question is, what accounting concept should you use to make a decision? Think about it. So stop the recording now and try it. Start when you finished. Okay, are you done? Let's go. Get the difference. Get the difference. You find that marginal cost is greater than marginal revenue, so don't produce. The same applies to 13,000 units. So the answer for this is 11,000 units. So what have we learned from this module? We had a knowledge of pricing strategies. We learned about marketing strategies. We learned how the concept of the value chain works. We learned how to use cost concepts for identifying low-cost suppliers. And we learned how to use concepts for identifying the optimum output for a firm. That ends this module.